It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice. Looks like psychosis. Life on relationship road. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice. Looks like psychosis. We live on relationship road.
Mary in number 2 is upset. Her partner is in Portugal and she is having to speak to her counsellor via Zoom because there has been another rise in COVID-19 cases and the counsellor is no longer offering face-to-face sessions. Mary knows that she is lucky to be able to speak to her therapist at all, but she is missing the sense of contact and support that she feels she gets when they meet face-to-face, especially now that she is alone so much at home. So, Mary, what about your neighbour Sally? Didn't you say that she has been a good friend for a long time now? Asks her counsellor. Yes, she is a good friend, and she's been great since Marissa went back home. But now that John has reacted so badly, I'm afraid to tell anyone else. I just don't know what I'd do if Sally acted as horrified as John did. You say that John was horrified, Mary, but didn't you also say that he was mostly shocked? I think you told me that after talking for a bit longer, he seemed to be a bit more accepting of the situation. It's important not to make this feel any bigger than it really was. Sometimes your fear of reactions makes the interpretation of events grow much larger in your head. Didn't you tell me that John was grudgingly accepting after you had spoken for longer? Yes, I think he was simply shocked at first. He's always been more conservative in views than his brother. He's not happy about it though. What if he turns against me when he thinks about it? That's even more likely if he tells his father. Listen carefully to what you just said then, Mary. You are catastrophizing a situation that may never even happen. Do you remember that we spoke about this before? It's really important that you try and check what you say against the actual reality of events. Can you try and say that again, maybe? Mary remembers that she has had several sessions with her counsellor, who has taught her how to reformulate what she thinks and says. She takes a deep breath and thinks for a minute. John was shocked, but then he was more accepting. My biggest fear is that he may turn against me when he thinks about it some more, although I have no evidence that he will do so. I'm also worried that my good friend next door will also reject me when she finds out the truth. But again, I have no evidence to support this feeling either. That's brilliant, Mary, responds her counsellor. Now, what do you genuinely think are the chances of Sally rejecting you? Have you ever had conversations with her in the past that might help you to gauge her opinion of gay relationships? Actually, it has come up before because we both read the same book a while back and there was a lesbian couple in the book. She seemed fine about it and said something along the lines of, "It takes all sorts to make up a world." I don't think she found it offensive, but that's in a book. It might be different in real life with someone she knows. Now you're working with your feeling brain again. Try to focus on your rational thinking brain. How do you think that she will probably react? I think that she will be okay with it, but my fear is that she won't be. So what do you think you might do, Mary? Will you continue to keep it a secret, or do you think you might risk telling your good friend? The choice is yours and only you can make it. I think I'm going to risk telling Sally because although I'm worried about her reaction, I have to hope that as a good friend she will be supportive. I can't keep it a secret forever and I feel so guilty about not telling her already. It almost feels as though I'm lying to her, even though I'm not actually doing that. We're still allowed to meet up as long as there is no other household involved. So I think I'll invite her over for a coffee and cake and take the plunge. I know I'll have to do it at some point, so I might as well get it over with. Mary and her counsellor finished their online session and Mary feels stronger and bolder. She wants to tell her friend. She has wanted to tell her for a long time, but fear has held her back. Now she is prepared to face that fear and she is as ready as she'll ever be to deal with the consequences of her disclosure. Melissa hopes to be back at the end of next month, so Mary knows that she can cope until then. It will be nice if everything is out in the open before Melissa returns, thinks Mary, smiling to herself. Life would be so much easier for both of us if we don't have to hide anymore. She texts Sally next door and arranges to meet up with her tomorrow. Meanwhile, Brendan from Flat 19 has been walking up and down Relationship Road on a regular basis. It's good for his health, he tells himself. But in truth, he knows that he hopes he will come across Paula. Just as he's heading to the corner shop, Peter comes into the front garden and calls out to him. Brendan stops to talk to him and says, "Hello, Peter, is everything okay with you and Alice?" "Yes, we're fine, thanks, but I was wondering if you had seen Paula lately. I went over to her house to ask if she would be interested in working for me for a few hours to give me a break from Alice. But I only got to see her husband Sean, and somehow I don't think he passed on the message. I'm sure she would have popped over and told me if she couldn't do it. I'm a bit worried about her really, which you probably think is really stupid of me, as I've got plenty of things to worry about with Alice. I just wondered if you'd seen her lately, as you know her." "Well, actually, Peter, I don't really know her at all," says Brendan a bit awkwardly. "I only met her on the day that Alice had Dinky. We just had a few words after you left in the car, and she asked me to walk Dinky back to his owner the other way so as not to upset Alice again." "That sounds like Paula," says Peter. "She'd have had it all worked out. She's very experienced in these matters, as she used to work with dementia patients before her mum became ill. I don't think she's worked though since her mum passed away. That's why I was hoping she might be willing to do a few hours for me." "Well, if I see her, shall I tell her that you'd like her to call in?" asks Brendan. "Yes, please, that would be good, thank you," says Peter. "I'd better get back to Alice. I can't leave her alone for too long these days. Well, you saw how things were." Peter turns and heads back into his house. Brendan can't help noticing how hunched Peter looks as he heads back into Alice. It reminds him that despite everything in his own life, it's nowhere near as tough as it is for Peter. He hopes that he can find Paula and let her know that Peter would like to employ her for a few hours a week. Brendan continues on to the corner shop and ponders over his conversation with Peter. First of all, he has discovered that Paula is married. He feels deflated by this news and chastises himself for ever thinking that it could be otherwise. Secondly, Peter has confirmed that Paula used to work with dementia patients, and thirdly, Peter was worried about her. Something to do with Paula's husband. Brendan's mind goes into overdrive, wondering why Peter should be so concerned about this. Kasia in Flat 18 is waiting for Pavel to come home from work. She has made a lovely meal and she hopes that tonight she will have the courage to tell Pavel how she is feeling. It has to be tonight, she tells herself, because her mum has rung her today and she needs to go back home for a couple of weeks. Her mum has had a fall and she has broken her leg and sprained her wrist. Kasia is going home to look after her, at least until her wrist is working and she can dress herself and cook for herself again. Kasia is well aware that she shouldn't be travelling during a pandemic, but she simply has to go back to her mum. Maybe a break from Pavel would be good for her relationship, she tries to tell herself. During their meal, Kasia tells Pavel about her mum and explains to him that she really needs to go back home. Pavel appears to be very supportive and agrees that she should return to support her mum. Kasia goes online and is able to book a flight for the day after tomorrow. Her boss at work will be unhappy about this, but Kasia knows that it's what she has to do. She has some holiday time owing anyway. But it's the 14-day quarantine when she comes back that will be the problem. She will just have to take unpaid leave, she supposes, and she says this to Pavel, who says, "It's a good thing that business is going well. We can manage without your wages for a couple of weeks. I know, it ruins our savings for a few weeks, but I'm sure we will be able to recoup the money," says Kasia. "Don't worry about it, of course you have to go home, it's fine," says Pavel, who is inwardly pleased that he will have the flat to himself for a few weeks. He is aware that there has been some tension between the two of them for a while, and he hopes that this enforced break will sort things out. Kasia decides that she has to say what's on her mind right now, while Pavel is being so understanding. "You know, I think this break from each other will be a good thing," she ventures, waiting to see how Pavel will react. He nods and she goes on. I've been feeling really unhappy for a while, Pavel. And before he can say anything, she continues. I've even wondered if you're having an affair. What? Says Pavel, not knowing whether to feel annoyed or surprised. Why the hell would you think something like that? Are you crazy or something? No, I know it's stupid, says Kasia, trying not to cry. It's just that you never seem to want to be with me these days. I mean, you're always working or jogging or going out. And I get upset when you won't help around the flat or with the cooking and... Kasia didn't get to finish her sentence. Pavel interrupts angrily, talking over her. Not that again. For God's sake, Kasia, will you give it a rest? I'm sick to death of that same old argument. It is the way it is, so get over yourself. None of these things mean that I don't love you, do they? But it feels as though you don't, sobs Kasia, unable to hold back the tears. I think it's a good thing that you're going back home for a while. We maybe need a break from each other, says Pavel. Then more kindly he continues. I tell you what I'll do while you're away. I'll look again at the finances and see what's out there at the moment to buy. I know this flat is getting you down and I agree that it's too small for us. How does that sound? Kasia sees a ray of hope and she smiles at her husband. Maybe he's right, she thinks. Maybe it's just that we are always on top of each other. Perhaps if we had more space things would be better. They both feel a sense of relief. Though for each other, it's for a different reason. Nevertheless, they go to bed happier for now. If you have something you would like to share or a concern you would like addressed, please send it in and we will try and incorporate it into the future storylines. Tune in again for the next episode of Relationship Road.
Welcome to Relationship Road, where people live just like me and you, alone or together in all kinds of weather, and most of them are scared of this flu. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. What kind of neighbor am I? Am I doing my bit for the road? My parents are elderly, my children disorderly, the whole world is suddenly slow. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. And if you need me, let me know, and I will be the first to show. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show. The future, well, nobody knows, but we'll do our best till then, I suppose. I've got my friends and my family, no place that I'd rather be. I'm learning to go with the flow. What's going on over there? It's none of my business, I know, but I couldn't help but notice it looks like psychosis. The pressure's starting to show.